When I was an assistant curate, so newly ordained, I had the privilege of serving at St. George's on the Hill in the West End of Toronto and experiencing some of the most beautiful liturgies I had ever seen. Their Wednesday night candlelit service was absolutely stunning. The church was in full darkness, except for candles lit everywhere at the front. 2 huge candelabra, one on each side of the high altar. Candles on the altar. So they didn't have a second altar, they only had the high altar. And the Paschal candle was right in the middle of the chancel area with an icon in front of it. There was a grand piano in the same area, but down just in front, kind of where David is sitting. The priest at the time, who played by ear, couldn't read a stitch of music, would come out in the dark, dressed in black, sit down at the piano, and just play. But he wouldn't just play anything. He would play 4 hymns from 4 different seasons of the church year and meld them all together. And the music would float to the very high ceiling and cut through the darkness. And he would end on a specific note. And that same note would be picked up by a flautist at the back of the church who would carry on as he quietly and slowly lowered the lid of the piano, got up, and left the sanctuary, and went into the sacristy, changed his vestments, and when ready, we would all process into the sanctuary in a straight line, and the service would begin. But if that wasn't enough to take your breath away, it was the end of the service that I will never, ever forget. As the hymn, Be Thou My Vision, do y'all know it? Be Thou My Vision? Okay. Was being sung by an a cappella group we called the Monks at the back. The candles at the front were being extinguished choreographically, one by one, each side at the same time by 2 servers. And when they were done, we all lined up, and we were all dressed in black. We all lined up, bowed at the altar, and left the sanctuary in a line. So the sanctuary was empty before the last line of the hymn, of the repeated first verse, waking or sleeping, thy presence my light. And the only candle left burning was the Paschal candle, the light of Christ, right there in the middle of the chancel. That was the sung line in the total darkness, sung by the monks at the back with that candle burning. Each Wednesday night, we were reminded that the light has come into the world and the darkness has not overcome it. Jesus is, and I believe will always be, the light of the world. So today we remember the words of Simeon over the baby Jesus, a light to lighten the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel. And we celebrate this great Bible truth that Jesus is the light of the world. And our candles here in the church, but I think also our candles at home, serve as a symbol of Jesus Christ, who is referred to as the light of the world. So let's take a few moments, just a few, and think about light. Firstly, and this may seem somewhat obvious, but light is the opposite of darkness. Now, how many of you remember August 14th, 2003, around 4 p.m.? Only one of you? A few of you up here, okay. The big blackout. Do you remember where you were? I will never forget. I was on the subway, and the doors to the subway car had just opened at Union Station, and I'd stepped out of the car onto the platform when the lights went out. Now, I knew I wasn't alone because it was rush hour, 4 o'clock. So there were probably 1,000 people there with me, but I couldn't see any of them. I could, however, hear a collective, whoa. So we calmly, believe it or not, walked up the stairs, giving our eyes time to adjust from the pitch black of the darkness of being underground to the light and warmth of moving above ground and the daylight. Then, after getting home safely, I was standing outside with our neighbors, enjoying their company. Notice I said I. Everybody was having a good time out with the neighbors. My husband happens to work for Hydro One. And before going back inside, scrambling to find candles and flashlights, because somehow we had a feeling we were going to be plunged back into darkness. Light is the opposite of darkness. Another example, perhaps less dramatic. I think we have all experienced being in a dark room and having the lights turned on suddenly and having to blink or squint because the bright light hurt. The contrast between the darkness we had just been experiencing and the sudden light is an immense shock, and it takes our eyes a little while to adjust. So while it may be obvious, light is the opposite of darkness. Secondly, light exposes the darkness. Now, in November, our vacuum cleaner stopped working. Brian would notice that more than I would. So our Christmas present to each other was a new vacuum cleaner. Very exciting, I know. But we splurged and bought a new Dyson that tells us how many dust particles it has picked up, because we all want to know that. But it also has a light on its head that shows the dust on the floor. It has become our new entertainment, watching the amount of dust this light has shown us. Now, I'm pretty sure that novelty is going to wear off. We thought the house was pretty clean. Well, we were wrong. Dirt, dust, and sorry Edward, our cat hair. Cobwebs, you name it, our Dyson has exposed it. Light exposes darkness. I think in some ways the same is true about Jesus as the light of the world. Jesus comes into the world and exposes the dirt and the darkness in our lives. He exposes the cobwebs and dust in each of us. As Simeon said in the Bible passage, this child is destined for the falling and rising of many in Israel, so that our inner thoughts will be revealed. Light exposes the darkness. Thirdly, the light defends us and rescues us from the darkness. Jesus defends and rescues us from the darkness within. My eyes have seen the salvation which you have prepared in the sight of every people. Salvation is a bit of a strange word. We don't really use it much. But basically it means deliverance, or maybe even a rescue plan. We all know that darkness isn't good. If you've ever watched a horror film like Alien or Seven or even Scream, you'll know it's in the darkness that the scary person or thing strikes. And we know it in our own lives. There may be some darkness. Things we wish we hadn't done or said or maybe even thought. It's like the lighting here being switched off, and slowly, one by one, each candle being extinguished. The darkness in our lives, sometimes referred to as sins, try to separate us from the eternal light of Jesus. Now, I know we don't like to talk or think about that very much, and I don't preach about that very much. There's enough darkness in this world. And we know it, so I don't like to harping on it. Maybe that's wrong. I don't know. But I do know one thing. And sometimes it's hard to remember. But God is here. And I think God rescues us. God sucks up, using my vacuum metaphor, God sucks up the dust of our lives, and I think rescues us from the darkness out of love. The light defends us and rescues us from the darkness. Fourthly, and finally, the light is great. Some of what I've been saying is somewhat depressing, except that we're really not talking about darkness. We're talking about light. The light of the world, and that light is great. When his parents bring the baby Jesus into the temple, why do Simeon and Anna make such a fuss over him? Because he is the light of the world. And that light is great. I think in loving Jesus, we have a sense of purpose, a sense of joy, and a sense of freedom. The light is great. So, in summary, light is the opposite of darkness, exposes the darkness, defends us, and rescues us from the darkness. Light is great. It brings life, warmth, and joy. So may we all proclaim, once again with joy and enthusiasm, that we are marching in the light of God. 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 We are marching, we are marching, we are marching in the light of God. We are walking, we are walking, we are walking in the light of God. I told the choir I always wanted to do that. Amen.